Tim Freriks, welcome to the Single Track Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Finn. First time. It's good to join you.
First time, and I'm excited, man. I think it's going to be a really exciting race. I do want to ask you a couple questions about your background since it's your first time on the pod. You have obviously registered some of the best performances in our sport in the last 6 to 7 years. Lake Sonoma in 2016 comes to mind, Transvolcania in 2017, the North Face 50 in San Francisco. As you head into this Black Canyon race, where is your fitness level and your mindset compared to like those years in the sport?
I think that's a fair question. I think the last few years have been a bit lackluster compared to like 16, 17, even a little bit of 18 for me. But yeah, I think fitness-wise, I feel like I'm approaching like 2018 fitness. I felt like, or for Black Canyon anyway, 2018, I came off of North Face and had like some of the best training in my life early 2018, was climbing really, really strong. And it just felt really good in training, but I think I kind of overdid things a little bit. Whereas I think I'm a little on the other end of the spectrum right now, kind of still progressing, getting back into consistent training. I ran, I think like 8:12 on the true course in 2018. Yeah. So yeah, if I can get back to that fitness level, which I think I'm pretty close to that fitness level, I'll be able to kind of mix it up a little bit on race day. And yeah, it's looking like a really good field. So I'm excited for it.
When you think about what the X factors have been for hitting your potential and being at the very top of the sport, what have been the key variables? Like, is it a function of like getting enough rest in between runs, or just purely going out and getting the amount of training you need to be successful? Like, what are your variables for success when things are clicking?
Yeah. I think my high school coach, it's like a line from like Once a Runner, and he would repeat this to us, a little corny, but like he would just tell us that there's no secret, because I do think that definitely resonated with me and my high school teammates, and that's kind of stuck with me a little bit since those days. Because I really don't think there is. Like, that's been my attitude with the sport. I think like results come from consistency and getting your head right and in a place where you can stack like training cycle after training cycle on each other. And I think like, I had 2016, I was coming off of like, I ran for an AU and had a college background and carried some of that fitness early on in my ultra career. And I think the other 2 years I really built on top of 2016, being my first year on the trails. So yeah, I think for me, I work as an ICU nurse as well. And I think the pandemic for me was like, I've always trained consistently the last several years, but I think there was early 2020, a definite shift in focus that I was okay with. Like, I trained consistently through that time period and was able to get like big days in the mountains, but wasn't necessarily like mixing it up in these hyper competitive races. And, I think just, like 2017, for example, I bombed Black Canyon after like leading and going out way too hard and like walked the last 15 miles. And then I had a great race at Transvolcania, because I think like the like 100+ mile weeks and consistent hard efforts during that Black Canyon block really set me up for success at Transvolcania. And so I think just that consistency and building, that's always been the X factor for me.
When I think about your training group there in Flagstaff, the Coconino Cowboys, there have been people like Jim and Jared that have taken the sport to the extreme. They're doing it full time. Then there are people like you that have incorporated it into other professions. Like you said, you're a full-time nurse too. Has there ever been a part of you that's wished you had taken that like full-time path in the sport, or do you feel like you can get everything you need out of yourself living sort of multiple lives?
Yeah, I think like the short answer is no. I think like at some point you need to like dive in. And in 2018, I actually did do that to an extent. Like I started, you can work as like a PRN nurse, which is just like casual employment. So like, and I've done that ever since. Like I've had a minimum amount of shifts that I have to work in a given month. And then, can exceed that. And when like when the pandemic happened, I just started picking up like full time.
Right.
But I feel really fortunate in the sense that I'm able to like scale back my hours as like training intensity increases. And so, yeah, it's like, I wish I had that excuse. Unfortunately, I feel like I have had, I think I'm in a good 12-hour shifts are long and they can drain your body, but I do think like it can be beneficial if you balance it well to have something else to kind of fall back on and just keep your mind stimulated and because if you're only training full time, and it can just drain on you mentally, I think, after a little bit. Like I found like working once or twice a week kind of keeps me on an even keel, and instead of like full on like no outlet outside of running. So yeah, I think finding that balance can be beneficial. But yeah, sometimes it's like, I get fed up and I'm just like, man, I just need to dive in full on. And this training cycle has been really good. I've been lucky enough to work pretty minimally the last 2-3 months and focus on training. But yeah, the end of last year, I wasn't training a ton, so I don't have like a really stout base that I'm coming off of. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Last question on this front. If you compare your mindset and joy for the sport and your competitive spirit for the sport between now and let's just say like 2016, 2018, has anything changed in that area for you? Are you still the same runner from like a mental standpoint?
I think like it's ebbed and flowed a bit for me. Like there have been times where I feel a little like, you get kind of just worn down on the sport. And like, for me, it's like, yeah, I've just found myself, like I get busy doing other things and felt like train consistently and would enjoy these big days in the mountains, but maybe race a little less through those periods. But I don't know. I feel like this training cycle, like it reminds me a lot of just like early days. Like, I don't know if the physical fitness is quite there, but it's been progressing week after week, this training cycle. And so, yeah, I think when I'm like, I get in that right, and that comes with consistency, that right, you build some momentum, I think. And like, yeah, I get just like, I love competing and mixing it up with a bunch of fast, talented runners. And, yeah, I think we'll have that on next Saturday. Should be a good race. And yeah, I get pretty competitive, and I like doing these things. So I feel like there's still that kind of foundation to my running for sure.
You're a veteran of this race. You got 7th here back in 2017. I think you won the race in 2018 and punched a ticket to Western States. What is the objective this time around?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get a golden ticket, but yeah, I think like, I don't know. It's not like I would love to run Western States again and go get a golden ticket, but if that doesn't happen, I would love to run Transvolcania again this year and kind of pivot to that. But if I do get a golden ticket, I would kind of refocus my year, I think, and give Western States a good crack. But yeah, this race, it's like on paper, it doesn't look challenging. Like it's got like 5,000 feet of gain, but as I've 2017 was this weird mud year, and they did mountain back, so it was a bit more climbing. But even on the full 2018 course that they ran, I think 2020 as well, or the last couple of years, it's pretty challenging. So yeah, we're searching for a golden ticket, but yeah, if it doesn't happen, I'd like to keep the ball rolling and roll this fitness into the next race.
Last question. Couple of your local Flagstaff friends in the race, Stephen Kirsch, Eric Sensman. Can you talk a bit about that dynamic and whether you've had a chance to train with them? And I guess I'm curious, like what kind of fitness they're in and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they're both pretty fit. Yeah, I've been training with Stephen and Eric a bunch. And, Jared hasn't been doing like quite as like big a days as the other three of us. But yeah, I would say Stephen and Eric are pretty fit, and they're both. Eric's really experienced on the course, and I think Steven, like, he's had a really good training cycle. So, yeah, but I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not like hyper competitive to the point where it's like, screw those guys, like, getting a golden ticket at all costs. Like, if they're running well, I'm just excited for them. So, yeah.
Right on. Well, Tim, pleasure to meet. We're excited to watch your race unfold on race day next weekend. We'll make sure to link to all of your social media in the show notes. Any final thoughts for the listeners before we go?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Finn. Yeah, I don't know. Excited to see how it plays out. I think there's really strong fields on both the men's and women's side. So, and I love this course. Like this race. I guess that's a good parting thought. It's just like it's an easy race to crew. It runs right along I-17. You're in the Soros. You kind of start in the grasslands, and so if you haven't run it before, it's kind of your classic Arizona desert race. So it'll be a good one. It'll be lots of fun.